Thanks for joining me yet again, my friends. I'm Dave from MMYAY, and we've still got more to get into from the fallout from Fight Night 89. So let's not waste any more time and we'll get stuck into it, hey? Alright, first fight I want to flesh out today is Jojo Calderwood's dominating performance over Valerie Letourneau. Jojo came out firing from the first bell and was able to rock Valerie with a spinning back fist just 3 minutes into the fight. Valerie held on, but it was the third round where shit got a bit weird. One can safely assume that Calderwood's gamble on TriStar and having Faraz Zahabi in her corner paid dividends because she was easily 2 rounds up going into the third, and Calderwood had been able to take Letourneau down pretty much at will and had lit her up like a traffic light. In much the same way that Valerie's fight went down with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she was pretty much outclassed most of this fight. But in the fight with Joanna Champ, she seemed to show heart till the end. On the stool before the third, if you were watching on Fox Sports 1, that would have gone to advertisements. Valerie's corner told her that she needed to end up on top of Calderwood and go for the finish, which is far easier said than done. I mean, that was pretty much the game plan that she'd been trying to work, and the game plan that had lost her the previous 2 rounds. The corner is obviously just running out of ideas. The end of this fight starts 90 seconds into the third with a body kick from Jojo that hurt Valerie. And this is also where the weirdness starts. Valerie turns her back and grabs her ribs as if she's sparring in the gym and needs a break. But this is a real fight and this is for all the marbles, so Jojo follows up. Then at 2 minutes in, Jojo lands a kick to the solar plexus / kind of like her boob, her chin was all in this kind of area. And Letourneau just flat out stops fighting. And the ref, Jeroen Valal, he just breaks the fight. Just breaks the fight. I had no idea either. I was completely confused. But it gets stranger. Valerie greases Jojo off and tries to fix her top, and everyone just stops fighting. It was an exciting fight and a real jolt for the women's division up until this point, but this is where they start to lose fans again. After a 10-second delay, they're kind of hand-holding and other weird shit. They fight. I guess they start to fight again. At 2.5 minutes, Valerie cops another kick to the midsection, grabs her ribs, turns around and runs. So the fight's over, yeah? No. Of course not. Valal keeps calling for Valerie to defend herself despite her back turned to her opponent, cowered in the cage. But Valerie doesn't want to defend. Valerie wants the fight to be finished. And Jojo doesn't know what to do. So then she follows up with a knee to the back of her leg and then finishes it all off with another spinning back fist which drops Valerie to the ground. The result isn't strange. Calderwood was the better fighter, and I don't think anyone would dispute that she was the victor. But what was going on in the finish? Letourneau pretty much tapped to strike, so that's how I can see it. But Valal had obviously never seen a finish of that nature, at least not in the UFC. I can't think of the last time someone's tapped to strikes in the last couple of years in the UFC. But suppose Valerie copped a spinning back fist that she really didn't have to, but I guess that's kind of what you get. And she was definitely the one at fault, so maybe that'll teach her a lesson going into the next fight. You can't just turn your back when you don't want to fight anymore. If someone hurts you in a real fight, they don't stop, so you can compose yourself like she's sparring in the gym. And you know what? If it's all too much and she can't cop those blows and wants to get out as soon as it gets too tough, maybe it's time to stop fighting. If we take anything away from this, it's probably why Jeroen Valal doesn't officiate many cards for the UFC. But importantly, I don't want to take anything away from Jojo. It was an impressive fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing her back at strawweight. There's definitely a potential for her to stay at flyweight, but no one else has put in their hand up to jump into that division. And the UFC have also been pretty mute on whether or not there will be continuing on flyweight fights. So I guess seeing her back at strawweight smashing some chick's face in is going to be the ultimate result. But it's unfortunate that all I can focus on, and I doubt I'm the only one, is the ridiculous finish to what was otherwise an amazing fight for Jojo. Anyway, We'll move on to Cowboy, and that was a fight that made more sense. Was Cowboy systematically destroyed Patrick Cote, and he managed to finish the fight with a TKO at the midway point of the third. Great fight. I mean, we could kind of see that it could possibly go that way. Patrick Cote is a big boy, so we thought he might have a bit more of a challenge, but Cowboy was really on fire over the weekend. So now the question kind of is posed, so what to do with Donald Cerrone? I mean, I don't think Cowboy really cares. I think it's more the media and people who are looking behind the scenes who care, because he seems to fight anyone. And when he's fighting consistently, that's when he's fighting at his best. And we've got to remember, he's only been beaten by Rafael dos Anjos in the last 3 and a bit years. Got beaten twice, but it's still only one opponent's been able to beat him in the last 3 years, and he's had a lot of fights. And he's had a lot of fights where he's beaten killers, and now he's in the welterweight division, and he's 2-0 in the welterweight division as well. Patrick Cote is no joke in that division, and if he hadn't had to succumb to injury well back a few years ago, I think it was in the fight with Anderson Silva where he blew out his knee, he'd probably still be tearing it up at middleweight. Patrick Cote is a big welterweight. And Cowboy didn't look too undersized, but Patrick Cote was definitely the bigger fighter over the weekend. So I guess we look at the Cerrone versus Nate Diaz rematch. This makes sense. This comes up, trigger straight to the brain. And I mean, this fight could also happen at either welterweight or lightweight. With Nate Diaz, he's up at 170 pounds as well. And they did fight at lightweight back in 2001. And Nate Diaz took the first fight via decision. The fight was a fight of the night before. It was a great fight. And both fighters have come such a long way since then. We've seen some great fights. I mean, no one thought Nate Diaz was going to be able to knock out Conor McGregor. He's done it in excellent style. He's highly tipped to do it again. Donald Cerrone was back in 2011, was having that down kind of spiral. He'd lost a few on the trot, and this is before the resurgence of this Donald Cerrone, who's 10-2 or 11-2 or something like that, who's beating opponents at both the lightweight and at the welterweight division. So Nate Diaz is tied up with that McGregor fight, though. So that's going to take him out. So someone else that came to mind was Gunnar Nelson. He currently has no fight booked. So I mean, we could definitely see a Cowboy Gunnar Nelson. Cowboy was relatively healthy after the end of that fight. We could see this coming up in the next couple of months. Gunnar Nelson just managed to submit Albert Tumenov in the second round. I think that was last month from memory. We've also got Rick Story or Tarek Saffiedine. Now, Rick Story and Tarek Saffiedine fought 3 weeks ago. And this is a way that we could really kind of sort out the welterweight division a bit more. Both guys are kind of back in that 7 and 10. Both still kind of looking to go to move around. And I mean, the welterweight division is pretty choked up at the minute. Wonder Boy's pretty much guaranteed the next title shot, whether it's against Robbie Lawler or against Tyrone Woodley. But those guys at the back really need to sort it out. I mean, Demian Maia is probably one fight away from earning a title shot himself, so he's definitely not in the running for Cowboy. Very interesting fight. And Carlos Condit as well he's kind of been sitting on the sidelines, and he was only beaten by the smallest of margins by Robbie Lawler. So as I was saying, the top 5 is pretty much sorted. I mean, Rory McDonald, we're not sure where he's going to be, but he's definitely in the top 5 as long as he can sign a new contract with the UFC. So, I mean, we're going to have to see a lot of the guys in those top 15 challenging the losers of the top 5 over the next 6 months. In the next 6 months, I think we're going to get it a lot more concise. We're going to see it starting to come through. A lot of the guys that are in the top that are struggling to win now, they're going to be dropping down. And you're going to have guys, with Demian Maia, he's got to be coming up. If he doesn't fight by the end of the year, I'll be very surprised. Although Carlos Condit may snake him on that. I mean, it just sets up the division to be really exciting. I mean, I'm excited by it every time I see a fight in the welterweight division. It's getting really exciting, and now you've got Cowboy coming up, and then you've got Nate Diaz also fighting at welterweight. Although wouldn't be surprised if he drops down to lightweight after his fight with McGregor. But welterweight and bantamweight seem to be the really exciting divisions for the next year or so. Well, to me anyway. continuing on in the welterweight division with the welterweight title. Lawler and Woodley fight. So it seems like that fight's gonna have to sit on the back burner. We're not really hearing much about it, and I understand that because we've got UFC 200 coming up in 3 weeks. We have 3 events over that UFC 200 weekend, so we need to get those out of the way. But we now know that the winner, unless some kind of shit show occurs, will be facing Wonderboy, who looked very impressive against Rory McDonald. Once we get past 200, we also need to work out how to beat Wonderboy. I mean, I went through a video last week. I had some strategies. I thought the leg kicks. I still think leg kicks are going to be effective against Wonderboy. They're going to stop him from being able to put the weight on that front leg. Interestingly, Rory McDonald kept going for those Inari rolls. Not a bad idea, but very hard takedown attempt against someone who's so quick and has such good reflexes. But that's it. We've got to start to work out how to beat Wonderboy. Leg kicks and Inari rolls aren't probably going to be enough, so we're going to have to look at more tape. And he lifted his game to a whole nother level in that fight against McDonald over the weekend. So yeah, so lots to look forward to over the coming months. We'll start getting into that in the next few weeks. For the next 3 weeks, I just kind of want to focus on UFC 200 and the other 2 cards, the Fight Pass card with Rafael dos Anjos and the Ultimate Fighter finale. So we'll get into that next week. But tomorrow I'm going to have a look at the money issue. I promised I'd have a look at the UFC sale rumours today. But I'll have a look into that. We'll have a look at the fighter pay issues that popped up over the weekend as well. Jojo, Cowboy, Rory have all kind of mentioned that, and there's a lot of focus on the Ali Act coming up as well. So it seems to be a pretty pertinent topic. I don't like to get into fighter pays too often, but it seems like with the UFC for sale, so many fighters mentioning their pay. It's something we've got to touch on, and I can get that out of the way, and then we can focus on UFC 200 coming in over the next couple of weeks. But until tomorrow, if you've enjoyed the video, or at least some of it, can you make sure you like and subscribe? Check us out online at MMYAY.com and get onto the Facebook machine and follow me on Twitter, which is @DaveMMYAY, because it's definitely worth following me on Twitter. All the details are in the box down there, so you can just click and follow the links, and it'll be great to get part of the community. Alright then, it won't be too long till I see you guys again, but until then, I've been Dave from MMYAY. Cheers!